the problem that was studied for the first time at the 2011 San Marino workshop at the mathematical, theoretical, and experimental level what is the origin of the redness of the sun in the transition from the zenith to the horizon. Now, to review the results again, I have to denounce politics in the field. When faced with this redness, which since there is no relative motion between the sun and earth, and therefore this is a blatant violation of the Doppler law and therefore of special relativity, then the general posture is that it is due to absorption. I am here referring to the hyperbolic and experimentally unverified conjecture that all frequencies of light are absorbed when the sun is at sunset except red, while when the sun is at the zenith, all frequencies of light are absorbed except yellowish. Ladies and gentlemen, this has to be denounced as a scheme. And why so? Because the sky is blue. Why the sky is blue when the sun is at the zenith? Because red light is absorbed. There is a physical law, the absorption is proportional to the wavelength. So if red light cannot reach us in the very short, relatively short travel of the sun at the zenith, which is about 60 miles, how can possibly red light reach us when the sun is at the horizon and travel for 6,000 miles without being absorbed? Ladies and gentlemen, there is a limit on scientific manipulation beyond which we lose our face and we have the dubbing America as the great scientific evil. Yet another excessive politics in the redness of the sun at sunset has to be denounced. And that is the moment they see this resonance, they claim that it is due to scattering. Ladies and gentlemen, this is scientific corruption for many, many reasons. First of all, Zwicky tire light was dismissed because in his proposal was originated from scattering. So therefore, the scattering origin of the cosmological redshift has been dismissed for about a century. And now, when we pass to the redness of the sun at sunset, the scattering origin is accepted. This is double standard, implies the loss of our dignity, and it cannot be accepted without proper denunciation. But let's recall what the Webster Dictionary says under scattering. Scattering is defined as the dispersal of light in a disorderly fashion in all directions. Now, what we are referring here is instead a redshift of direct sunlight, sunlight that propagates in a direct line between the sun and the observer. But there are many, many other reasons. For instance, show me the equation when the famous professor at Princeton, MIT, Harvard, Berkeley claims that this is due to scattering. Ask the equation published in a referee journal representing the redshift is a shift of up to 200 nanometers. Show me the equation. I can assure you it does not exist. So at the 2011 San Marino workshop, we presented systematic measurements according to which that the redness of the sun at sunset is indeed isoredshift, exactly as predicted in the 1983 Journal of the Italian Physical Society. Now, the problem, however, is dramatically more complex than the detection of the isoredshift for a one monochromatic laser light. Why so? Because you have to study the entire spectrum of light, and you have to see the shift. If you cut the spectrum of light to a certain value, then you cannot possibly see the shift of the entire spectrum. It will be like you see, if you cut this is the light from a nearby galaxy, this is the light from a faraway galaxy. You see that cut at the same interval of wavelength, you see no shift. And so you conclude that the shift is the same irrespectively of the distance, which is absolutely not the case. So in view of this, I look for the best possible wavelength analyzer, which is produced by Yokogawa in Japan. This is one of their representatives. And we did the systematic measurement of the entire spectrum of light from the zenith to the horizon, and the results have been published into this paper, which is the central paper regarding the implications of the isolate shift for cosmology and astrophysics. Those are some of the chromatogram obtained with the sun going down toward the horizon by the Yokogawa analyzer. This is an elaboration done by a famous expert in Europe in elaborating a chromatograph from the sun and other spectral line. I cannot mention his name to avoid his life to be disrupted by organized interest on Einstein. Here you have 90 degrees, that's a zenith, and then by decreasing the elevation you can see this goes up very, very fast. The important point here is that you can see 200 nanometers of shift. Of course, at the end there is a very high contribution from infrared. This is another elaboration, also clearly confirms. This is yet additional measurement via Avantes analyzer, in which you see again the entire spectrum. This is at the zenith, and then this is with the elevation going down all the way to the. Again, you see 200 nanometer of shift. Notice that the absorption line do not shift. They cannot shift. If you want to have a frequency shift with absorption, you have to change the chemistry of the atmosphere, which is an impossibility. This is an elaboration of the data from Avantes, from another scientist, this time from the USA, also very famous expert in this type of elaboration. This is the sunlight at the zenith. This the red one is at the horizon. Again, you see 200 nanometers. There's again elaboration. This data were re-elaborated and redone many times until finally published in that paper that recently appeared in 2012. I want also to add, here we have the equation, namely a numerical representation of 200 nanometer, published in a referee journal. And this thing is invariant over time. Namely, not only we achieve the numerical representation, but the theory predicts the same numbers under the same conditions at different times. The main cosmological conclusion presented for the first time at 2011 San Marino workshop is that the mathematical, theoretical, and experimental evidence on the isolate shift nature of the redness of the sun at sunset is visual evidence that the universe is not expanding, because this redness occurs without any relative motion and is merely due to loss of energy by light to the atmosphere, and is today known as the Zwicky-Santilli effect. Moreover, the redness of the sun at sunset is also visual evidence of the absence of the acceleration of the expansion, because as you can see, the redness increases with the decrease of the elevation, which means with the increase of the travel in our atmosphere, and indeed the isolate shift is proportional to that travel.
Professor Santilli is Albert Einstein and Newton in one. His isomathematics is like Newton's calculus. Calculus started the revolution in science that we know today. And Professor Santilli's isomathematics is that revolutionary. I mean, you literally have to immerse yourself to realize the significance of how the isomatic is as revolutionary as Newton's original calculus. And similarly, Professor Santilli's theories on the universe, on its hadronic mechanics and hadronic chemistry, is similar to the revolutionary scientific theory that Albert Einstein brought to us. Albert Einstein evolved the scientific theory from Newton to a completely new level altogether. And to me, Professor Santilli is taking the next level of Einstein up to the next level.
Additionally, the studies presented at San Marino workshop dismiss completely the existence of the Big Bang. In that respect, I have to recall that when I was at Harvard, I had irreconcilable disagreement with my physics colleagues there, Steve Weinberg, Shelley Glashow, Sidney Coleman, and their friends, particularly on the Big Bang, because there is a limit in manipulation of science to maintain Einstein theory, beyond which I do not intend to be part. First of all, the Big Bang necessarily implies the Earth at the center of the universe, exactly like as it is the case for the expansion of the universe and the acceleration of the expansion. Because Big Bang has to be compatible with the other two. And again, never forget, according to the Hubble's law, the redshift, the cosmological redshift, is the same for all galaxies having the same distance from Earth in all directions from space. So I'm sorry, I cannot accept a return to the Middle Ages with Earth at the center of the universe just to preserve Einstein's beloved theory throughout the universe. Sorry, I will never do that. I will look for alternative theory. But that's only the beginning. Next, let's look at the Webster dictionary and see what is an explosion. Everybody knows that when you have an explosion at one point, all the debris is thrown away very, very fast in all directions. What is the implication? The implication that if the universe had been born by the primordial explosion, the universe should be empty of any galaxy around Earth in a sphere with a radius of 13.7 billion light years. No, experimental evidence is a galaxy uniformly distributed. So how can it be a Big Bang and then with the debris, a chunk here and then a chunk with adaptation of the debris to a preferred model? This is no credibility at all. But it's only the beginning. Everybody knows, again, look at the Webster dictionary. In an explosion, the debris slow down with the distance. And this the Big Bang was proposed to represent the acceleration of the expansion. So it's too much of a concoction that I could agree with my colleagues at Harvard. But this is not all. The so-called background radiation, which does indeed exist, has been experimentally verified. The politics is that this claim as being evidence of the Big Bang. Ladies and gentlemen, this is another manipulation of knowledge on the misuse of public money as well as academic credibility. Why so? FST graduate students can prove that the background radiation, since it is very weak, in the event created by the Big Bang, should have been completely absorbed by galaxy and intergalactic dust billions and billions of years ago. The only credible representation and interpretation of the background radiation is that you need a continuous energy source. Otherwise it goes away, it's too weak. The only continuous energy source is the Zwicky-Santilli effect. The energy lost by light through intergalactic gases cannot disappear from the universe, and it is converted precisely in the background radiation. Needless to say, the moment the expansion of the universe is dismissed by experimental evidence on the isolate shift, the acceleration of the expansion is dismissed, the Big Bang is dismissed. Of course, the extremely far-fetched idea that space itself is expanding makes no sense whatsoever. I shall mention very briefly that the isolate shift hypothesis for the cosmological redshift provides a numerical and time-invariant representation of all experimental data on the cosmological redshift. I shall also mention that ISO redshift provides a numerical representation of the cosmological redshift of ARPS pairs of quasar and their associated galaxy, which according to clear gamma spectroscopic evidence are physically connected, yet the cosmological redshift are dramatically different, sometimes by a factor of 100, 150 or 200. So the interpretation via the ISO redshift is obvious. Quasars have a huge chromosphere, sometimes as big as a small galaxy. And it is also very dense. By comparison, the inner galactic medium is a very thin gas. So therefore, light exits those physical media in dramatically different ISO redshift. And here you have a numerical representation of those data. I shall again remember that the interpretation of ARP's pair of quasar and associated galaxy, the interpretation of those the dramatically different redshift by scattering is a manipulation intended to preserve Einstein theory.
Everything about the redshift was fine until the mid-70s, when the astronomer Halton Arp made a series of observations which upset the establishment's view of things. Rather than look for a genuine scientific explanation for these new observations, however, the establishment sought to rubbish Halton Arp. They even banned him from using the major telescopes in the world, and that for the man that at the time was regarded as probably the best observational astronomer in the world. However, his observations, the photographs he'd taken, they still remained. So, we were still left with the question of how to explain them. In about 1991, Santilli came up with an explanation. And this explanation has since been verified by measurement. Now, this is one little story, but it's one amongst many, where Santilli's novel ideas and novel approach to looking at physical problems has led to a solution to problems that had remained unsolved for ages and ages.
At the 2011 San Marino workshop, we also presented systematic, mathematical, theoretical, and experimental evidence dismissing the so-called conjecture of dark matter. To begin with, a very, very central feature of gravitation is that matter causes gravitational attraction. So therefore, if a galaxy is filled up with dark matter, it must contract, necessarily must contract. Otherwise, it will violate Einstein gravitation. Galaxies do not contract. So the lack of contraction of galaxy is evidence of the impossibility for galaxy to be filled up with this mysterious substance. In reality, the anomalous cosmological redshift of peripheral star is a beautiful evidence on and provides actually numerical value of the density of the gas in the interior of the galaxy that originates the ISO redshift. The anomaly is indeed due and is numerically represented by the ISO redshift. In closing this section, I must denounce this diagram by Vera Rubin that originated the dark matter conjecture. It propelled the dark matter conjecture to all sorts of levels. And this is a claimed measurement of velocity, anomalous velocity, compared to the distance. Namely, the paper claims that the velocity of peripheral star is anomalous. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a manipulation of science, because what Vera Rubin actually measured anomalous cosmological redshift of peripheral star. She tacitly assumed the validity of special relativity within the intergalactic medium. Additionally, she assumed the validity of the Doppler law within such a medium. And after all this assumption, she derived, as a consequence of this chain of assumption, this claim on the velocity. So this is very unfortunate for American science, because it is not a scientifically valuable statement. What should have been here is an anomalous redshift, not the measurement of velocity. In closing, at 2011 San Marino workshop, there were also systematic, mathematical, theoretical, and experimental studies dismissing the additional conjecture of dark energy, according to which about 95 or 97% of the energy of the universe is contained in this mysterious substance, and they call it dark energy. Again, if we believe in gravitation, then the universe, since the entirety of the universe is made by energy, dark energy, the universe will contract as a fundamental laws in gravitation. The universe is not contracting. So the very conception of dark energy is in dramatic disagreement with the very, very feature that were intended to represent, namely the acceleration of the expansion. In reality, it should have the opposite, it should have the contraction. And the number of inconsistencies of dark energy are endless. They were all discussed in details at the San Marino workshop. I will only close by indicating the politics underlying dark matter. And it deals with the Einstein energy equivalence. I must recall that Einstein formulated this famous energy equivalence, also due to Poincaré incidentally, for point particles in vacuum. Point particle in vacuum. Einstein and Poincaré, they were giant, they were real physicists, not politicians. So those words imply technical aspect. For a point particle, the speed of light in vacuum is the maximum causal speed. So therefore, this equation, this energy equivalence, is unavoidable. There is no other alternative, period. But where is the politics? The politics in cosmology is that they extend this this law, exactly valid for point particles, they extended to for the interior of a star, quasar, and black hole. Therefore, implying a priori that c is the maximal causal speed in the interior of a black hole or quasar. This is a purely conjectural, personal opinion, and certainly not science that will resist the test of time. And that is the reason, yet another reason why our science is dubbed as the great scientific Satan, because of those manipulations that are known now all over the world and must be stopped. I would like to close this segment by indicating to the American taxpayer that Shelley Glashow, now I understand at Boston University, and Samuel Ting at MIT and CERN, as well as their friends, managed through friends in the Congress to obtain $2 billion to launch a probe for a number of things, but primarily to detect dark matter. The probe, the $2 billion probe, has been launched. But what the taxpayer has to know is not only that the conjecture of dark matter is structurally inconsistent, disproved by experiment, etc., etc. What the taxpayer to understand the gravity of this type of science, quote unquote, is that both Shelley Glashow, Samuel Ting, and all those proponents of this probe, they know that dark matter cannot be detected. So therefore, how they solve this problem? Oh, they dream of getting out of the scrutiny by saying, oh, dark matter cannot be detected. However, dark matter is composed of particles they call the neutralino or some other. So what they do, they extend a chain of conjecture with yet an additional conjecture, which by conception cannot be verified. And so therefore, in this way, they maintain the preferred theory, which remains always, they maintain Einstein theory. Everybody knows Shelley Glashow, Samuel Ting, and their friends, they are fanatics of Einstein theories. So they did impossible to preserve their validity under condition Einstein never intended for. But ladies and gentlemen and fellow taxpayers, unless this trend of misusing billions of dollars of public funds in totally far-fetched conjecture that are intrinsically inconsistent, disproved by the direct evidence they were intended to represent, disproved experimentally by independent experiments on Earth, etc. Unless this type of misuse of public funds and academic credibility in the United States of America is stopped, ladies and gentlemen, the dubbing of America as the great scientific Satan is justified. As far as I'm concerned, I'm an American. I'm trying to fight this perception of America as an evil, scientific evil, by indicating that I am not part of them. But ladies and gentlemen, I cannot do this alone.
Gas will virtually eliminate our reliance on foreign crude oil, which will stabilize our economy, and it will bring the control of the United States economy back to the American people.
We are here at Moroso International Racetrack to prove that the new fuel produced and known as under the name of Magna Gas can indeed used successfully in a race car, such as, or at least in a sports car. This car has no catalytic converter, yet the exhaust surpass all EPA requirements as they stand now. So therefore, this car proves that, that racing can indeed be done with an environmentally acceptable fuel. Moreover, this fuel can be produced anywhere with reactors called hadronic reactors. And those reactors for the recycling of liquid waste can be anywhere, including in this racetrack. So this green fuel can be produced anywhere desired and in any amount desired. As you can see, there is no difference whatsoever in performance between gasoline and Magna Gas, or between natural gas and Magna Gas.
This is the culmination of 20 years of hard work and research.
It's been a long journey, a very exciting journey.
mio nome è Giorgio Beghella Bartoli, sono il direttore tecnico dell'Autodromo Nazionale di Monza e sono anche il direttore di gara del Gran Premio d'Italia di Formula 1 da 21 anni. Negli ultimi anni abbiamo sviluppato il Monza Research Institute, che è praticamente l'ufficio studi dell'autodromo, e nel 2008 proprio abbiamo avuto il piacere di avere qua a Monza una vettura alimentata a magnegas.
In view of the rather vast mathematical, theoretical and experimental evidence presented in this documentary, I hereby request that governmental officers do not grant public money to extremely far-fetched conjecture that have been experimentally disproved in any case in referee journal that cannot be ignored without losing dignity and credibility. Moreover, I want to point out that the entirety of research presented in this documentary was supported by private funds. Therefore, in the event my colleagues are still remain interested in pursuing their far-fetched conjecture, of course they are welcome to do so, but they are requested to do it by using their money or using private money and avoid the use of public money in exactly the way we have done it.